Before we start, just a quick reminder to hit that subscribe button. Only 2% are subscribed at 1,000 subscribers. I'll be posting a special video. I cracked his laptop and hit search again. Tabs bloomed, then the phrase punched back at me. Special spa massage parlors, repeated with careful misspellings. My hands hovered over the trackpad, steady but cold. I knew this wasn't a curiosity scroll. I'm Laura, 33, and I should have slept. Instead, I opened the downloads and watched the cursor blink. Receipts sat in a neat folder that shouldn't exist. Each file name used dates and initials and times. I opened the most recent and swallowed air. No colors or mood music or scented fluff, just totals. Room fee, service fee, tip rounded up. A note read special hour with lotus stars. I copied the line into a blank doc. I needed proof before my voice betrayed me. I started a screen recording and scrolled slow. Maps matched the listings with tiny coded winks. Discreet private relaxation after hours. One review mentioned curtains and a locked phone box. I paused the recording and flagged that sentence. My phone buzzed with a calendar reminder he made. Friday open 3 hours unnamed block. The same day as the last receipt glowed. The time window fit the note and tips. I breathed through my nose and kept going. I checked his messages, then opened a thread named Coach. Coach used moons and flowers instead of words. Lotus at 7, new therapist, VIP. He replied with a thumbs up and a train emoji. I stared until the icons blurred and sharpened. I called the number from the listing and waited. A woman asked for payment up front and a name. I gave a fake one and a card. She offered lockers and deep tissue and privacy. I asked if extras existed after 9. She paused, then said packages had different tiers. She said we close late on Fridays. She told me to arrive alone and discreet. Her voice smoothed out when I confirmed. I typed the time and ended the call. I opened our bank app and cross-checked charges. He had split payments across 2 cards. One card held the booking fee in daylight. The other card held the tip at night. He thought 2 lines meant no pattern. I needed to hear him lie before I confronted. I closed the laptop and put it back. I climbed into bed and watched his chest. I asked about Friday without moving my head. Meetings, long ones, late traffic, he murmured. He rolled away and pulled the blanket up. He asked if I still wanted the new kettle tomorrow. I said sure and watched his hand relax. Normal words felt like stones in my mouth. I kept quiet and planned the route. Morning hit fast and I brewed coffee on autopilot. He kissed my temple and checked his watch. He asked if I could pick up his dry cleaning. I nodded and wiped a clean counter twice. He left and my jaw finally unlocked. I called my sister and asked for a favor. She said her couch was free if I needed. I said not yet and asked for company Friday. She offered to sit outside and keep watch. I told her to text me if he arrived. At lunch, I reserved a spot under my fake name. I paid cash at a kiosk across town. I bought a scarf and cheap reading glasses. I tested walking past mirrors without noticing myself. I would not blink when I saw him. Back at work, I booked an urgent therapy intake. Earliest slot was Monday at 8. I used my maiden name and a new email. I wanted a witness who wasn't family. I wanted language that would not wobble. I moved through the afternoon like a decoy. He texted me a heart and a thumbs up. I replied with a dinner photo and a joke. He sent a late meeting selfie with 3 men. One corner of the frame showed a poster. I zoomed in and recognized the station wall. He had taken that photo near the platform. The meeting story had a train baked inside. My stomach tightened and then steadied like stone. I saved the image and locked my phone. Night came again and the house stayed obedient. I rehearsed 2 lines in the mirror. Where are you going? Are you paying for extras? He would choose yes or a lie or silence. Any answer would change our home tonight. I tucked cash in my shoe and reset the plan. I printed screenshots and hid them in my coat. I told myself to keep questions short and sharp. I told myself to leave if my voice shook. The worst part would be the first word. I canceled dinner and cooked an alibi instead. I sent him a photo and a quick heart. He replied with a thumbs up and a train. My fork never touched the plate after that. I needed him to believe the house was still. I created a calendar invite titled Wellness, No Location. I added him, made it public, then waited. He declined within minutes and marked it busy. The speed told me he already had plans. My jaw set hard enough to ache. I pulled a small tracker from a drawer and breathed. I slipped it into the lining of his coat. He wore that jacket whenever he took the train. I tested the signal from the hallway and smiled. Tonight the map would talk back. I called the spa using a block number and asked. I pretended to confirm a reservation for an associate. A receptionist asked for initials and time window. I tried the initials from his file names and paused. She chirped a confirmation and offered a loyalty upgrade. I asked what loyalty meant and let her pitch. She said returning clients get preferred staff after 9. She used a coded phrase about premium endings. Her voice softened when I did not flinch. I asked if cash simplified everything and she laughed. I planned a dry run before the real thing. I walked the block at midday and counted exits. A side door opened near a narrow service lane. A camera watched the alley with a broken tilt. I pictured his face under that dead angle. I texted my sister one sentence at a time. She replied with a single dot and a car emoji. We used dots when we needed backup fast. She would wait 2 blocks away and watch. If he arrived, she would call twice then hang up. I needed proof that didn't rely on their files. I bought a prepaid card and kept the receipt. I scheduled a ride for 7:40 to the corner. The driver name matched a past route from his app. Patterns like that rarely come by luck. I set a rule on our joint account and paused. Anything charged near that location would alert my phone. Bank tools can whisper when people think they hide. The alert would time stamp his arrival without me. I wanted a clock he could not argue with. He came home early and hovered near the hallway. He asked if I felt okay for tomorrow. I kept my voice even and offered leftovers. His eyes flicked to the coat and away. I pressed a kiss to his cheek and waited. When he showered, I opened his train card app. I transferred a tiny balance to trigger history view. 2 recent stations lined up with the spa block. A third hop revealed a regular Friday pattern. I closed it and wiped the screen with my sleeve. At 7, my sister texted the single dot again. I put on the scarf and glasses and breathed twice. I left the car on a side street facing south. South led to the highway and clean exits. I would not get boxed in if things surged. An alert hit my phone like a spark. Rideshare started near the office and headed downtown. The tracker dot moved in the same direction. Both streams converged on the same grid square. I walked toward the corner and slowed before the door. I didn't go inside, I wanted distance. I leaned against a newsstand and checked the map. The dot stalled half a block away, then crept forward. Another alert flagged a small cash withdrawal nearby. He was stacking cash to avoid another line. My phone rang once, then again, then silence. Sister's signal for eyes on him, no talking. I tightened my scarf and studied my shoes. I let my hands settle to stop the shake. Then I lifted my head and saw him turn. He pivoted toward the entrance and I moved. A couple stepped between us and I cut left. My pulse steadied as I matched his pace. I lifted my scarf and lowered my head. He reached for the door and glanced back. I raised my phone like a mirror and waited. He checked his reflection and adjusted his collar. 2 short breaths, then he pushed inside. I texted my sister one word, now. Her reply came as 3 dots and stopped. I followed 2 steps behind a man with earbuds. The hostess smiled past me and waved him through. I slid into the gap and offered my alias. She checked the list and tapped a bell twice. I felt heat rise and forced my shoulders down. A basket appeared for devices, sealed on the spot. I slipped mine in and kept my watch on. She handed a numbered token and pointed down. No small talk, just rules and a practice nod. I pocketed the token and counted doors. He stood at the counter completing a consent slip. His handwriting crawled across the line and paused. He rubbed his temple and leaned toward the receptionist. I shifted so the plant blocked his angle. I needed him to enter a room first. A woman in scrubs beckoned me to a hallway. She asked about pressure and preferences and boundaries. I answered with neutral phrases and a steady face. Then I asked if Coach still referred clients here. Her eyes flickered, then she led me farther in. We stopped outside a linen closet and waited. She whispered that gold tier starts late. I asked what gold covers without winking. Her chin lifted a fraction, then dropped again. Different endings for discreet guests, she murmured. I asked for a practitioner by initial and time. She checked a tablet and frowned at the screen. That slot just freed up due to a cancellation. Would I upgrade now to hold it? I agreed and asked for printed itemization. The manager arrived with a smile that didn't move. He offered complimentary credits and a private suite. I asked for a receipt with coded services. He gestured to a policy that forbids printing details. My heartbeat slowed as the leverage clicked. From the front, a low laugh cut the room. His voice unmistakable, carrying through the partition. I touched the wall with 2 fingers and listened. Footsteps approached and halted inches away. The manager cleared his throat and stepped aside. I peeked through the gap and saw him sign. Another attendant slid a wristband across the counter. He hesitated, then tucked the band into his pocket. He glanced over his shoulder once, scanning faces. His gaze skimmed past me and kept moving. I mouthed to the attendant that I felt faint. She offered water and reached for the call button. I steadied myself and said I needed fresh air. She guided me back toward the lobby slowly. I matched her pace and angled toward him. He turned again when the bell chimed twice. Our eyes hooked for a beat that burned. His hand closed into a fist, then opened. He stepped toward a corridor instead of me. The hostess raised a palm at my chest. Is there a problem? I kept my tone flat. The manager smiled and asked for patience. I held up the token and requested a refund. He offered store credit and a later upgrade. I repeated refund and watched his jaw tighten. A phone on the desk began to ring. The hostess ignored it, then answered on the 5th tone. Her face shifted at whatever she heard. She covered the receiver and asked for the manager. An inspection team is asking about licensing, she whispered. The room snapped into quiet movement and quick whispers. Doors opened and staff ushered clients down hallways. He took a step toward the back staircase. I slid sideways and blocked the stairs with my hip. Wait, I said and lifted my chin. He froze long enough for panic to surface. 2 questions, I told him, crisp and low. Are you buying a package? Are you hiding cash? His throat worked and his eyes darted once. A guard appeared behind him and cleared his path. I reached to the counter and took a clipboard. A check-in slip clung to the top like a flag. Initials matched his with today's timestamp and ink. The manager lunged, but my hand moved faster. I tucked the slip inside my sleeve and turned. The guard asked us both to relocate immediately. He pointed to a sitting area with a stair. I smiled and nodded and took 3 steps. Then I veered toward the exit and didn't slow. Behind me his voice rose, then broke. I hit the sidewalk and he followed fast. My sister's car idled 2 blocks down, barely moving. He reached for my elbow and I stepped back. 2 minutes, I said, voice steady and loud. People turned, which bought me cover. Are you purchasing an upgrade tonight? I didn't blink. His mouth opened, then closed, then opened again. Only a standard session, he muttered with a shrug. Show me your pocket, I said, chin up. He flinched and pressed his hand flat. I pointed at the nearest ATM across the lane. Withdrawals last 10 minutes, prove me wrong. He swallowed and fished out the receipt slowly. The amount matched their whispered tier from earlier. Heat climbed my neck, but I kept breathing. My phone buzzed twice and cut off. Sister's signal for eyes on staff at the door. I saw the manager scan the street and retreat. They were clearing rooms because of that call. We wouldn't get a second chance tonight. Endings, I said, each syllable precise and cold. He stared at the pavement and nodded once. Booked or offered, I pressed, not leaving a gap. Offered, he whispered as his shoulders sagged. Offered meant preparation, and that mattered. Another buzz hit, this time from the bank rule. Geofence alert stamped the exact minute and corner. I held the screen up like a badge. Your calendar says meetings, I said without decoration. He rubbed his brow and lost any swagger. Was this your first attempt? I asked, still iron. He stared at traffic and tapped one knuckle. Third inquiry, he breathed, voice almost gone. Contact name, I said, hand out and waiting. He hesitated, then unlocked and handed me his phone. A temporary chat sat pinned near the top. Numbers replaced names and the icon showed a moon. The last text read, "Tonight you skip the band." Under it, an address and 3 digits. I screenshotted and sent it to my own number. He reached for his phone and I kept it. You don't get privacy while I verify this. He nodded and stared at the spa entrance. Across the way, 2 suits entered without hesitation. Inspection had finally arrived and the timing burned. Step away from the entrance, one of them called. He lifted his hands and backed toward the curb. I kept the clipboard slipped tight against my wrist. The suit glanced at me, then past me. I tucked the paper deeper and stayed silent. What do you want from me? He asked, breaking. Testing tomorrow, complete access, counseling Monday. His shoulders dropped in a quick surrender. Anything else? He asked, voice thin as string. Hotel tonight, I said, not softening at all. He nodded and looked toward our neighborhood line. Keys, I added, hand open and immovable. He plays. D them onto my palm like a toll. I pocketed them and spoke very clearly. You pack with me watching or you go with nothing. We started walking and he fell half a step behind. I never crossed the last line, he muttered again. In 10 is still a line, I answered without heat. He flinched like I had thrown something hard. I let the silence work while we moved. My sister pulled up and cracked her window. You good? She asked, eyes on me only. I'm handling it, I said, keeping my gaze forward. Want a ride back? She offered like a lifeline. Follow us home, I said, then looked at him. He offered to take a taxi and disappear. You don't duck consequences, I replied with a glare. We crossed the street as the suits taped notices. A staffer peeked out and slammed the door quickly. That slam felt like a small confession. At the corner he faltered and checked his coat. You forgot your band, I said, just above a whisper. He froze with his fingers still inside. Where is it? I asked, holding his stare. He pulled out the wristband and dropped it. I snapped a photo of it on the ground. Artifacts help when memory tries to rewrite. He winced and shoved his hands deep again. I was done explaining and he finally understood. We turned toward the car without another word. Halfway to the lot, my phone lit again. A text from the unknown number arrived suddenly. New plan, back staircase, use side door. I showed him the screen and watched his face fall. Reply, I said, finger hovering over send. What do I write? He asked, throat tight. Write cancel and block, I ordered without pause. He typed it slowly and pressed send. I watched the typing indicator flash, then die. We waited for nothing, which told me enough. Outside our building, I paused and squared my shoulders. You take the guest room and keep the door open. He nodded, eyes on the floor like a student. You call the clinic in the morning and schedule. His lips parted but no sound came out. I unlocked the door and stepped inside first. He hovered at the threshold like it hurt. I placed the clipboard slip under a heavy book. He watched the motion and knew it was safe. I looked at him and drew a new line. You sleep here tonight under the same roof. You move to a hotel tomorrow after your tests. You hand me every login before you shower. He nodded once between each sentence without debate. Then he reached for his phone and stopped. I held out a notebook and a pen. Accounts, all of them, write each one down. He listed emails, banking, cloud storage, and folders. I watched his hand wobble on certain names. Those names would lead somewhere sharp. I unlocked his laptop and mirrored the screen. Start with the messaging apps, I told him. He opened them and stared at the inbox. I tilted the monitor until our reflections split. Search the moon contact, I said, not blinking. Threads spilled out like a map with traps. I filtered by attachments and recent activity. One clip showed a hallway with numbered doors. Another showed prices disguised as sports scores. I saved everything and noted timestamps. Call that number now, I said, chin lifted. He hovered over dial and glanced at me. I nodded once and crossed my arms. The line connected and a man exhaled. "Change of plan," I said, taking the phone. "We won't be attending," I continued, voice steady. Silence, then a click that sounded practiced. I hit redial and got a dead tone. They were already cleaning their trail for later. Good, I still had our copy. I forwarded the files to a clean email. Then I exported chat logs to a drive. He watched the progress bar with a blank face. I held his gaze and kept counting seconds. Control feels like oxygen when trust collapses. "Open your map history," I said, voice low. Pins dotted a grid I expected, ugly and clear. He rubbed the edge of the desk and waited. I compared the pins to bank alerts line by line. 3 overlaps formed a neat set. "Screenshot and print," I ordered, "no soft edges." He fed paper and I stacked the sheets. I wrote labels in thick letters under each. He winced when I wrote "today" under the latest. Dates have a way of cutting excuses. "Contact the clinic," I said, holding the phone. He dialed and put it on speaker. "Earliest panel tomorrow morning," I told the receptionist. She booked it fast and sent an intake code. I repeated the time back so he heard. "Counselor next," I added, keeping tempo tight. I opened the portal and filled the form. I used the appointment Monday that I already secured. I wrote his name on the intake where required. He read it and swallowed once. He reached for a glass and paused midair. "No," I said and pointed back to the list. "Passwords for cloud backups, then two-factor resets." He typed slowly while I verified each prompt. We changed recovery emails to mine. A new notification pinged on his mail. Subject line read "License Review." Sender unknown. He tensed like it might explode on touch. I opened it and scanned the boilerplate text. "Someone flagged that business tonight," I said. His shoulders dipped, then stiffened again. "Not our concern," I added, keeping focus forward. "We're handling our perimeter, not theirs." I archived the message and moved on. He nodded without argument for once. "Who is Coach?" I asked, leaning closer. "A coworker," he answered, eyes dropping fast. I opened the company directory and found a match. I saved the number and drafted a statement. I told him he would send it tomorrow. The statement was 4 lines and left no wiggle. I wrote it on paper so he felt each word. "I will not use company time or contacts for solicitation. I acknowledge policy and I request compliance review." He signed and dated it with a shaky hand. "Pack a bag for 2 nights," I said. "Only essentials and work things." I followed him to the guest room door. He placed items on the bed, then looked over. "Keep moving," I urged, tapping the frame. While he packed, I photographed the clipboard slip. I sent it to a secure folder with timestamps. Then I texted my sister a single square emoji. Her reply came fast with a thumbs and a check. Backup stayed ready in case he turned slippery. He finished packing and zipped the bag shut. "Phone," I said, palm up and waiting. He handed it over and I opened settings. I removed fingerprint access and set a new code. He watched, then whispered that he understood. "Do you?" I asked, holding his eyes. "Because this doesn't end with forms and screenshots." He nodded once and traced a crack in the case. "Tomorrow is proof," I said, keeping my voice flat. "After that we decide if there's a road." He stood very still and stared at the door. "I won't run," he murmured into the room. "Running isn't the fear," I answered without blinking. "Rewriting is the fear, and that stops tonight." His jaw tightened and finally stayed put. I set alarms for morning and placed the bag near him. Guest room lights on, door ajar. He carried the bag down the hall slowly. I followed until he crossed the threshold. I waited until I heard the zipper again. Back in the living room, I arranged the stack. Receipts first, then messages, then location history. I added the hotel rules in block letters. Monday underlined twice with the counselor's name. I left the pen on top like a pin. My phone vibrated once with a new text. Unknown number again with a blunt question. "Are you still coming or should we replace you?" I stared at the words until they blurred. I typed 2 letters and pressed send. I woke him before dawn and pointed to the door. "Shoes on, clinic first, no debate." He grabbed the bag and followed without a word. I kept my phone visible like a metronome. We moved fast because hesitation grows teeth. At intake, I filled his forms while he waited. He rolled up his sleeve and stared at the floor. Vials lined the tray like checkpoints we had earned. He flinched once and looked at me for permission. I gave a nod and watched the labels stick. Results by noon, the nurse promised through a practiced smile. I handed over my number and repeated the time. We stepped outside and the air felt like a verdict. He exhaled and reached for my elbow out of habit. I shifted away and let silence do the work. Back home, I opened his laptop and set timers. Work calls from the hotel after check-in, I said. No personal chats, no side channels, keep your map on. He nodded and held out the phone like an offering. Consequences finally outpaced his convenience. I drafted an email to his compliance office. 4 sentences, dates, acknowledgement, request for review. He read it slowly and asked if we must. We must, I answered and clicked send without ceremony. That copy landed in my folder a second later. Next, I opened a new thread to HR. Subject line plain and sharp. Reference to misuse of referrals during business hours. Attachment with screenshots and a short summary. I pressed send and watched his shoulders cave. I dialed the unknown number from last night on speaker. No greeting, just a long inhale waiting for me to blink. Remove me from your list, I said. Lose this number and any connected profiles. The line clicked off like a switch. We drove to the hotel without speaking. At the desk, I handled the payment and key. 2 nights minimum, I told the clerk evenly. Extend only with my approval, I added while signing. I handed him the key and kept the car remote. In the room, he placed the bag on the chair. Open it, I said, standing in the doorway. He unzipped and spread out the contents for inspection. No surprises, just basic things and a charger. I nodded once and pointed to the desk. Write 3 phone numbers you call when stressed. He wrote 2, then paused on the 3rd. I waited until he added coach's direct line. That one gets deleted after we retire. In records. He stared at the digits like they could beg. I took photos of the list and the screen. Then I opened his contacts and removed the alias. Block confirm report. The actions landed like small nails in soft wood. He watched and said nothing because the pattern was obvious. At 11, the clinic called with partial clearance. Panels negative so far, final results pending by 3. I put the phone on speaker so there were no doubts. She read each line and noted the follow-up schedule. I thanked her and wrote the appointment on my copy. I handed him a printed boundary sheet across the desk. Columns with conditions on one side and consequences on the other. He scanned each line and his mouth tightened. Any breach restarts separation with no discussion, I said. Any omission counts as a breach, I added unblinking. He nodded and lifted his eyes like he might negotiate. I raised a hand and ended that idea before it formed. This is not punishment, this is guardrail. I will not play detective again. He let the hand drop and finally agreed. My phone vibrated with a new email from HR. They wanted a call and copies of the attached receipts. I scheduled a video meeting for late afternoon. I forwarded the link to his inbox while he watched. He opened it and set an alarm without prompting. Before I go one more step, I said. Open your photo archive and search by location. Thumbnails jumped into view from the massage block. Angles I had not seen and faces I did not know. I saved the metadata and closed the window fast. He reached for water and stopped halfway again. Ask your question, I told him, bracing for dodge. His voice came out thin and deliberate. Do you want me here at all after this? I let the quiet sit where the answer lived. I want honesty without babysitting, I managed after a beat. I want my own safety before your shame. That means distance until trust earns its way back. His jaw worked once, then stilled completely. He nodded like a person at a final door. We walked to the lobby together and paused. Updates by text only, I said, keeping my tone steady. Proof attached, no paragraphs, no excuses. He lifted the keycard and promised with a look. I turned before I could translate it into hope. In the car, I called my sister and delivered headlines. No extras, evidence intact, boundaries in motion. She exhaled and asked if I needed company tonight. Not now, I said, staring at my knuckles. I need space more than noise right now. On the drive home, my phone chimed once. Clinic again with final results stamped complete. Everything clean, follow-up scheduled. Relief came with a cost I could taste. I did not let it soften the rules. Back inside, I filed the documents in a locked drawer. I put the copied slip under the folder like ballast. Then I opened a new journal entry titled Today. I wrote the sequence in bullet points only. No adjectives, no verdicts, just facts that hold. Evening settled, and the apartment felt unfamiliar on purpose. A text arrived from his number with a photo. Room clock, counselor confirmation, HR calendar invite. Short lines exactly as agreed with attachments. I answered with a single checkmark and nothing else. I stood in the doorway of the guest room and listened. Silence answered back from every surface like a lesson. I didn't know the ending yet, and let that be. The pen lay where I left it on the stack. I closed the door and kept walking toward tomorrow.